Hi, my name is Grohowski, and thank you for joining me on my YouTube channel. Today I'm going to be showing you guys a basic warm-up that I work on whenever I'm at home or on the road to help me get warmed up and also to help me work on solidifying my use of quintuplets. Quintuplets are, over the last, I'd say, several decades, are becoming more and more prevalent in Western music, not just neoclassical or any sort of experimental music, but in music in general. And not just by drummers, but other types of instrumentalists as well. Even though quintuplets have been around since antiquity, really, it's becoming more prevalent in music, and I find myself a lot of times actually using quintuplets in how I play my grooves, or even in certain melodic phrases that I play on the kit, or even in solos, a lot in solos. Most of what I do in solos involves some sort of groupings of 5. And today I wanted to show you guys a basic warm-up that I do using the quintuplet, more so because I find that for those who are now getting into using other subdivisions other than your standard duples, triples, quadruples, sextuplets, etc., or for those who prefer eighth notes, triplets, and sixteenths, and I guess sextuplets still, I guess that doesn't really change. For those who are getting more into and curious about using other subdivisions, I find quintuplets to be a very good sort of gateway into exploring other types of subdivision. Mostly because at any tempo, you can really hear and feel the differentiation between a quintuplet or a quadruplet or a triplet. You can really actually feel the difference, and it does take some time to get used to if you're coming at it from a Western perspective. That being said, today I'm going to show you guys a basic exercise using these quintuplets, and it's just something that you could do at a nice slow tempo, works great as a warm-up, and it also helps you get the phrasing together and get used to feeling what quintuplets sound like regardless of what your hands are doing. So today I'm only going to be using a snare drum and a metronome to keep the pulse, because it's not just about the playing aspect of it, it's also how you feel the time within the quintuplet. Many times, for most musicians, we tend to be very downbeat oriented. We need the anchor of a downbeat. There needs to be something that is there, that holds us to the pulse and holds us to the time, and especially as drummers, 98% of what you're going to do in your entire career is marking the pulse, marking the beat. We call it a groove, but a groove is a lot more than marking time. But for most musicians, even in 2015, there's still the common misconception that in order to be a drummer, you are the one that's responsible for time. And it's an illusion, actually. It's a fallacy that is taught in schools. That is not the truth. Time moves forward regardless of what you do or do not do. So it's not just the drummer's responsibility. We all must adhere to time, because time will adhere to no one. And let's face it, if the singer or the horn player or the piano player is playing whatever tempo they want, and you and the bass player, or I'm assuming you're a drummer, if you and the bass player are holding it down, sure, what they will be doing will sound cool and possibly hip if they do it with enough conviction and meaning, but the reality is that they're not playing in time, and they're letting you be responsible for it. And especially in a context of music where perhaps there's a lot of improvisation taking place, and it's not set arrangements in songs that you're trying to play, it could either be kind of cool to engage with that, or it could be really lame to have to listen to that and not engage with it at all and just mark time. But I digress. So for today's exercise, I will be showing you groupings of quintuplets. I'm going to have a quarter note that's going to be going through the metronome, which I will conveniently place through my stereo system since I'm not at the studio today, I'm at home. But the metronome will be only giving me quarter notes, which again, I apologize for calling them quarter notes, but I know some people prefer that. Let's call them what they really are, pulses. There is no quarter note. It only exists in notation and in music theory. But in the real world, in the music world, in reality, quarter notes are just a concept. They're not a physical, tangible thing. But pulses can be physical and they can be tangible. And we know gravity is real, and we know time is real. They govern nature and they govern the universe. So we're going to call it a pulse. The metronome will be giving me pulses, and I will be playing groupings of quintuplets on top of it. And the way we start the exercise is we start with groupings of 5 in each hand. So I'll be playing 5 and 5 in conjunction with the quarter note or the pulse. From there on, I will be reducing from 5 to 4 to 3 to 2 to 1. So basically you could think of it as hand alternating exercises, but starting with groupings of 5, then moving to groups of 4, groupings of 3, groupings of 2, and then groupings of 1. And then oscillating back and forth between those patterns. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'd also like to make a special note that I apologize for the calamity that's happening around me. As some of you might be able to tell in the video, I'm in the process of doing a little home remodeling right now. I've been repainting a bookshelf behind me as well as rearranging some of the things in the apartment. So I apologize that this looks really cluttery and messy, but you're not here to look at how messy I am. We're here to work on the instrument, work on drums, work on phrasing and subdivisions. And by the way, if you have other musician friends who are not drummers but would be curious about hearing this stuff, please share the video. Knowledge is a wonderful thing and we can all learn from each other in every aspect. All that being said, let's go over the exercise. So as I've stated, I'll be doing groups of 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1, or quintuplets, quadruplets, triplets, duplets, and singlets, for lack of a better word. If somebody has a better word, please put it in the comments so that I have a frame of reference. I like learning. Digressing, groupings of 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 in each hand, and then going back and forth, along with the metronome. I believe I have the metronome set for 76 BPMs. I recommend starting somewhere within the range of, the 60s to the 90s for doing this exercise. Obviously, you can always bump up that metronome faster if you want, or slower if you like. Either way, just keep in mind that a nice medium slow tempo is a really good place to start, because this isn't about building your chops. This isn't about, I want to hit blast beats at 310 BPMs for an hour straight. This is about warming up your hands and at the same time working on feeling odd subdivisions. All right, so now that we got the metronome going, I'll now demonstrate the exercise for you. And remember, for drummers, you don't have to only do this with your hands. This is also an excellent exercise to play with your feet, and especially for those of you who are double bass players who maybe also dabble in the extended techniques that come with doing doubles in the feet and any other sort of heel toe or whatever technique you use, flat foot, doesn't matter. This is also a great exercise on the feet. It kicks my ass personally, but it's great. It's a really good workout, especially at slow tempos. It really gets the accuracy going. And keep in mind, if you're a drummer that plays another instrument as well, you can also adapt this exercise to these other instruments. And if you have friends that play other instruments who maybe are getting into doing these kinds of phrases and hearing rhythm in this way, I also recommend please share the video with them and they can come up with their own exercises to sort of work on these rhythms and these patterns and get used to them and make them become more comfortable. The more we all learn collectively, the more we evolve as musicians and as people and as creative forces, and it helps music to evolve further. Even though they're just exercises, they can have big impacts. All that being said, now I'll demonstrate the exercise, and thank you for watching. 1, 2. Though I can't necessarily call that a perfect run, you get the basic idea of what's happening within the exercises. We're keeping the same grouping of subdivisions. It's still quintuplets throughout every pulse, but as you go from 5 to 1 and back, you start to hear how the subdivisions change the feeling behind what you're playing. Hey, Scaredy. It's my cat, ladies and gentlemen, Scaredy. If I had a cameraman, he would probably begin to tape the cat's butt. See, that's his butt, but you can't see it right now. Maybe you can. I'll see afterwards. Anyway, getting back to the point, as you go from 5 to 1 and then back, you start to get a sense of how the subdivisions, the quintuplets, feel and how they can be explored. So if you've noticed, a lot of times, like when you're doing 5, 4, 2, and 1, the switching between which hand is getting the pulse, or the accent you could say, switches between right and left. And though that is especially true for the groupings of 3 within the quintuplets, you start to see how the meter sort of changes, where you can oscillate back to either 2 or to 4 depending on which end of the pattern you're on. It's not like you're doing a bar of 4 necessarily. It becomes a different type of count because of the grouping of the 3s with the 5s. I guess because it's 2 prime numbers, you could say. And if you want, we could do math later and we could totally analyze this, and then you could figure out how many bars of triplets or 3s using quintuplets you can use, and this, and that's all fine and dandy. Please experiment at home. But you start to feel how, depending on what kind of subdivision or grouping of the subdivision you're playing, you start to see how they line up in context of the pulse. And if you're hearing it in a much larger meter, or perhaps even in a much larger phrase, if a 2-bar phrase, a 4-bar phrase, a 5-bar phrase, you can start to see how your hands and the accents will eventually line up in certain key places. So for the groupings of 3 with the quintuplets, if you noticed, every 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, all of a sudden the accent's back now here. Whereas with, for example, with the 5s, it's always that, because we're delineating the entire grouping of quintuplet. So 1, we're already at the downbeat. Whereas with the groupings of 4, it takes more cycles before it actually gets to the main pulse. And at that point, you've already switched to leading with the left hand and then switching back to the right hand. So if you think of everything as a measure of 5-4, one measure, one pulse, you have your groupings of 5. In one measure of 5-4, you have your groupings of 4 using the quintuplets. And the same thing goes with 2s and 1s. It's smaller. I mean, even at that point, with the 1s, you're again back to a ratio of just 1 pulse between switching lead hands. And with the groupings of 2, you're doubling that length. But with the triplets, not triplets, groupings of 3 with quintuplets, it takes a slightly more askewed and longer phrase before you actually get back to a 1, so to speak. So these are things to think about when you're working on these exercises, and really, beyond just playing it and physically playing it and feeling it, keying in with that, and regardless of what you're playing, you still have the feeling and the understanding of, here's this anchor of the metronome, which could be easily your left foot or right foot or another instrument altogether, that is keeping this pulse going, and feeling these subdivisions with that pulse in mind. It's not enough to just simply go through the hand motions and have a metronome and make sure that you're on point. The goal is to be able to feel quintuplets regardless of how you're grouping them, and then going from there, having the pulse steady within you while you're expanding upon these rhythms. Now, this is the basic version of it, and from there, your imagination can go wherever you like, going between groupings of a 5 and a 2, or however you see fit. This is just only using a basic exercise with quintuplets. Anyway, thank you guys for watching this video. I hope it was helpful. I hope it's informative, and at the very least, slightly entertaining. Hopefully I'll be able to do a couple more of these. There's some other exercises that I have worked out using groupings of 5 over various types of metronomes and triplets that again, are not so much about what you're playing, but how you're hearing what you're playing and how you're phrasing within that. Hey, Scaredy, you really want to be on YouTube, don't you? Showing off your butthole at everybody. Good job. Sorry about that. But anyway, thank you guys for watching. Please share this video, share it with your friends, share it with your enemies, share it with drummers you love, drummers you hate, drummers you wish played better, drummers who play too good. If you have any comments, you know, there's a whole comment section down there, and it's usually a very entertaining and strange place to be in the comment section of anything that's on the internet. But please feel free to comment, make suggestions, take notes. If you have anything you'd like to actually see me do in a video, please let me know. I have the time now before the touring schedule starts to get really crazy with Dap Theory and Abraxas and Zorn and everyone else. So until then, thank you guys for watching. Thank you guys for taking a peek into how my brain works, and hopefully it can be beneficial to you. And like I said, please share, and I'll see you soon. Scaredy, you are very excited. Come on. Say hi to the internet, Scaredy.